This is not just another portfolio tutorial on YouTube. This is an AI driven portfolio. And you can send this to any recruiter and they can ask your AI assistant about you. Let's see. So let's just start with what was your college? And this app right here knows everything about me, whatever the data that I want to provide it. There we go. I completed my master's from VIT Vellore. So it's gonna respond as if I'm the one responding over here. Let's see. What are your hobbies? As for my hobbies, I enjoy creating content related to front-end development, which I share on my social media platforms under Roadside Coder. Additionally, I used to work as a professional voice artist. Amazing. What type of content do you make? Oh, I think it already has mentioned it previously, but yeah, I primarily create content related to front-end development and interview preparation. So yeah, this is what we're going to be making. And don't worry, we're not just going to use the OpenAI's API and just feed it our data and just ask question from it, right? That if we have a large amount of data, imagine that would be very expensive to run. So that's why we're going to be using something called as vector databases, out of which we will be storing all of our information, which I'll be explaining you in just a minute. And we're going to be making this app using NextJS and Tailwind CSS. So what I'll do, I'll initialize a new NextJS app over here. I'll say npx create next app at latest. And it's going to ask us a few questions. We need to install the following package. Okay. What's the name of your app? I'm just going to press dot over here since I'm already inside of this folder and want my app to be over here. Would you like to TypeScript? No. Would you like to use ESLint? Yes. Tailwind CSS? Yes. src directory? No. App router? Yes. No. And yeah. And you can see it has started initializing a new Next.js app inside of this folder. And since Tailwind comes right out of the box with Next.js, it's going to install that as well over here. There we go. Our Next.js app has been initialized. Let's just run it. So I'll say npm run dev. And if I click on over here, there we go. Our Next.js app is running. So what I'll do, I'll go inside of the app folder and inside of the page folder, and I'll remove everything from over here. And I'll just have a simple div, which will say, subscribe to Roadside Coder, which you should if you haven't yet. So yep, everything is working. Let's remove this image import. Okay. So what I'll do, first of all, I'll prepare my data. So what is the data that we are going to be feeding to this? So right here, I'll create a new folder called db, that is for our database. And I'm going to create a new file for sample data.json. And I'll paste my data over here. So see, this is the way that I've prepared my data. Info, Piyush Agarwal, description. Over here, I've added a short description about myself, like I've done masters from VIT Vellore. I was born and raised in Kashmir. I currently live in Gurugram. Where did I work in the past? Education, I've added this. So basically, I've added chunks of details about me. And this app is going to format this information and present it to the user. You can see in the profession, I've added what I've done in the past, what I'm doing currently. In the YouTube channel, I've added details about my YouTube channel. I've added details about my Instagram, my Twitter handle, just in case the recruiter wants to know. I've added one personal project over here as well, that I've made a chat app using MERN stack. Code for that project is over here if the recruiter is interested, right? So this data is very, it's in chunks, right? But recruiter can, or the user can ask the question that, give me the names of all of your social media. So it's gonna go over here, it's gonna take this, and it's gonna present it in a human readable proper format for them, and then it's gonna respond to them. So for storing this data, we're gonna be using something called as vector database. Let me show you. So if I go to Google and just search data stacks, let's open this link over here, datastacks.com. And I'm going to quickly go on and sign in. Let's accept the terms and policies. There we go. We are successfully in. Now what I'll do, I'll go on and create a database. And I'll create a vector database over here. Let's just name it YouTube. Or, I can just name it portfolio as well. Select a region. Let's select this, US East 2, and create the database. Alright, so while that is creating, let me tell you what vector database are and what are vector embeddings. So basically, when we will store our data inside this database, it's going to look something like this. So these numbers that you see over here on the screen are what we call as vector embeddings. Now let me give you an example to explain this. So let's say we have three words with us: ball, fall, and sphere. So when you ask the computer that which two words are similar, it's going to say that, yeah, ball and fall looks similar, right? But if you ask a human which two words look similar, they're gonna say ball and sphere are similar because both of them are round, right? So they have closer meaning to each other. So this is exactly how vector embeddings work. We're gonna store our data inside of our database and it's gonna be converted to these numbers, and when we ask it some question, it's gonna convert our question to the vector embeddings, and then it's gonna compare that question with the pre-existing vector embeddings and gonna see and compare the numbers, which numbers are similar. If the numbers are similar, then it's gonna return that particular response. And whatever response that we will get from this vector database, we're gonna format it using OpenAI's API. Now, how will we create vector embeddings? So to create vector embeddings, we have multiple different large language models like, OpenAI, and there are a bunch of models on Hugging Face as well, right? But we're gonna be using OpenAI's model. So let's just go on and platform.openai.com. So after you have signed in on this platform, just go to API keys and click on create new secret key. You can name it anything. I'm gonna name it for, portfolio, and create secret key. And you'll get this key right over here. Let's just copy it and paste it somewhere over here inside of our project. So inside of our project, I'll actually create a .env file, .env, where we will store all of our environment variables. So I'll just keep it right over here for now. We will assign it to a variable soon. And now if you go back to the OpenAI's documentation, let's go to the docs and go to embeddings. So you can see over here, we have a bunch of different models which help us create vector embeddings. So if you scroll down, you can see, you can just provide it the input text and what model that we are going to use. And it's gonna output us with this sort of data. And you can see right over here, this is the embedding related to the input that we gave it. All right, great. So let's see, yep, our database is active now. So let's see how we can inject data inside this database. So I'm gonna go back to my NextJS app. I'll create a new file over here, loaddb.js. So first of all, I'm gonna install a few libraries. So I'll open a new terminal and say npm install. First one is going to be data stacks/astra-db-ts. So this is the database that we're using over here, right? So this will help us out to inject the data or take the data from the database. Then we're gonna be installing something called LangChain. And inside of the LangChain, I'm going to be using a package which helps us divide our input into small parts so that we can upload it to the database. Then I'm going to be using .env package so that we can use the environment variables. And of course, the OpenAI package so that we can use OpenAI API and we can generate vector embeddings. Alright, meanwhile that's happening, I'm going to say import from @data stacks/astra-db-ts. Then I'm gonna be importing from LangChain/text splitter, and I'm gonna be importing recursive character text splitter. This is the function that will help us to separate our text to upload it to our database. And also from our data stacks, I'm gonna be importing data API client, which will help us to upload the data. Then I'll import .env/config. Then I'll import OpenAI from OpenAI package. Awesome. And you can see these have finished installing as well. Okay. Also, let's just import our dummy data, this sample data.json. So I'll say import sample data from .sample-data.json with. So I'm going to be importing it as JSON. So I'll say type JSON. Okay. So basically the logic that we will write inside of this file is going to help us to inject all of our personal data inside the database so that later on we can make the request and fetch it. Now, first of all, let's just initialize our OpenAI API. So I'll say OpenAI equals new OpenAI. We're going to be using this package that we have installed over here. And inside of this takes an object which will take API key. So basically the API key is this right over here that we have pasted, right? So we're going to be adding it inside of an environment variable. So that environment variable can be called, let's say, OpenAI. So I'll take this and I'll paste it right over here. So now over here, I can say process.env.openAI key, and this can be done by importing .env/config. This is our environment variables. Okay. Now below this, I'll create a new client for my database. So new data API client, and to use this, I'm going to be taking the application token or the API key for our data stacks as well. And actually, in our environment variable, we're going to be needing three different things: the API endpoint, the DB application token, and the DB namespace. So let's see where we can find that. So if we go back over here, you can see we have this API endpoint. Let's copy it and paste it over here. We have application token. Let's generate a new token and copy it over here. And yeah, application token over here. For our namespace, let me just close this. For our namespace, we can go to Data Explorer, continue, and let's just use the default namespace, which is this right over here. So I'll just say default key space. Okay, let's go back to the load DB, and over here I'll provide my application token. All right, then for our database, I'm going to create const db equals client dot db. And also you might be thinking where you can find the documentation for all of this. So if you go back, you can see we have this documentation tab over here, right? So you can find all of these things, how you can initialize a new database, how you can upload new data and all right over there. So inside of this, I'm going to copy this process.env, and over here I'll give my API endpoint. So inside of our .env, this API endpoint, so I'll paste it over here. And the second thing that it will take is the namespace. So namespace, which will be process.env dot this one Astra DB namespace. So basically all of these things are required for us to interact with the database and also OpenAI's API. Now the next thing that we're going to be doing is, before uploading our data to the database, we're going to be using this recursive character text splitter, and we're going to split our text into different pieces and then we will upload it. So basically all you have to do is const splitter equals new recursive text splitter, and inside the parenthesis it will take an object which will take the chunk size, which I'm going to say 1000. So chunk size basically means how many letters that this can take at once, and chunk overlap means how many letters can overlap between two chunks. Alright, cool. So we have done everything to set it up. Now we're going to be creating const create collection, and we're going to be creating a new collection inside of our database, inside of where we can store our data. So this is going to be an asynchronous function, async, and I'll put it inside of a try catch block. So I'll say await db that we have created earlier, db dot create collection, and let's just name our collection something. Let's say my dash portfolio. Second thing that it will take is an object which will take vector. So inside this vector, we're supposed to provide some dimensions, the dimensions of the vectors stored in the collection. So I'll just say 1536. So what this is all about, what is this all about 1536? So if I go back to my embeddings for OpenAI, so basically we have different models over here, right? Like small and large text embedding. So if we come down over here, you can see by default the length of embedding vector will be 1536 for text, embedding 3 small. This is the model that we will be using. If you want to use large embeddings model, you have to enter 3072. So that's why we've entered 1536, because we need to tell the database that this is the dimension of vector embeddings that we are going to store inside of it. Alright, cool. So after this is done, inside of the catch, I'll simply say collection already exists. Oops, exists. If we are not able to create a new collection. Now after this is done, we're gonna load our data inside of our collection. So const load data equals async, and I'm gonna create a new function over here, const collection, and this variable will say await db dot collection. This collection that we have made over here, my portfolio, I'm gonna refer to that, and then simply I'll run a for loop over here, and I'll say for await, and inside this I'll take whatever that's needed from my data. So this sample data over here, we need the info and the description, right, and the ID as well. So I'll say ID comma info comma description out of the sample data. Right now inside of it, I'll take all of the chunks that we have created using this splitter right over here. So I'll say const chunks equals await splitter dot split text. I'll say let I equals 0, and now I'm gonna iterate through these chunks. So I'll say for await const chunk of chunks, and inside of this I'll say const data, which will come out of await OpenAI. So basically I'm going to generate new vector embeddings using the OpenAI API. So OpenAI dot embeddings dot create, and inside this will take a object where it will take first of all the the input, just like we saw in the documentation over there. It takes an input and it takes the model that we're going to be using over here. So let me just copy this line, this model. So the input will be this chunk, and then I'm gonna provide it the model, which is text embedding 3 small. All right, great. Now I'm gonna take this data right over here, and I'll say const response equals weight collection dot insert 1. So we're gonna be inserting one collection. Sorry, we're gonna be inserting one item inside of that collection, right? So I'll say document underscore ID. If you don't have an ID beforehand, you can generate the ID over here using UUID or package, something like that. So I'll say ID, then I'll take the vector embedding. So vector will be the data that will be provided to us from the OpenAI API. So data, and you can see over here inside this data we have this embeddings key, right? So I'll say data of 0 dot embeddings or embedding. Then I'll provide it with the info and the description that we have about us. Info and the description. All right, and I think, yeah, that should do it. After that, let's just say I++ to iterate this loop, and in the end, let's just console log that data has been added. Awesome. And then in the end, I'm gonna run the create collection function, this create collection function, and after this is successfully ran, I'm gonna say dot then, and inside of this I'll run the load data function, this right over here. All right, let's save our file and let's try to run this. Let's see if our data is successfully added inside of our database or not. So I'll open a new terminal and I'll say node db. So it's inside of db, right? So ./db/loaddb.js. Let's run this file and see if we get any error. Okay, we do. Cannot use import statement outside of a module. Oh, okay. So we need to tell it that this file that we're using, loaddb, is part of our ES6 convention. That is, we're going to be using of type module over here. So just add this line in the package.json. Value my portfolio not valid. Okay. So I think this format is wrong. I think I should say, let's say my portfolio, or let's just say portfolio, right? And over here in the description, I'm gonna provide the chunk, not just the whole description, right? That's why we broke down this chunk into small parts. Let's try to run it again. Okay, it says that collection already exists. Namespace this, collection this. I think this should have done it. Okay, data added. Let's go back and see. If you refresh this, all right, our portfolio collection has been created, and you can see the data has been successfully added inside of our database. And yeah, these are the things that we called as vector embeddings, right? Okay, let's go back and try to create an API from which we can, interact with our data. So in Next.js, you might already know, we have inside of our, app folder, we can create a new folder called API. And inside this, we can create different routes. So I'm going to create a new folder for chat, right? And this is very important to be kept as a chat route, because we're going to be as we progress in this video, we're going to be using something called an AI package from Vercel, which, relies on this chat route, which uses /API/chat route from default. I'll show you how you can do that. So basically inside this chat folder, I'm going to create a new file called route.js, where we will keep all of our data. So first of all, I'm going to import OpenAI from OpenAI, then OpenAI stream, streaming text response from this AI package. And this is the package that I was talking about. And this will help us to stream our data to the front end. Like if we ask it any question, it's going to send our data in chunks so that it feels like that it is streaming from the backend. And let's just install this package as well right away. And also we're going to be using data API client from datastax/astradbts so that, we can interact with our database data. So I'll say npm install AI. Now meanwhile that's going on, we have to do the same things. We're gonna create a new OpenAI instance, and we're gonna create a new data API client instance from datastax and our DB as well, right? So both of the things we've already done, right? And now over here, I'm gonna be creating a new function, like I'll say export asynchronous function, and this function is called post, and it will take a request object inside of it. Now let me show you one thing. If I go back to Google and I'll say AI npm, and yeah, this is the package that is created by Vercel, which helps us to develop chat apps using AI. Things like OpenAI or LangChain. So okay, let's go to the home page. All right, the AI framework for TypeScript or JavaScript as well. If I click on Get Started, you're gonna see Next.js app router, and basically this is what we are supposed to do. So you can see we have created a function over here called post, and it's gonna take the messages that's gonna be coming from frontend, and it's gonna provide it to OpenAI, and then OpenAI will stream the result, like whatever, like for example, if you ask it any questions, it's gonna respond it from the OpenAI first, and then it's gonna stream it from the backend to the front end, right? You can go through these docs. These are very good docs to understand this package even more in depth, but I'll show you how you can do that as well. So first of all, I'm gonna be taking this request object from, which is gonna be coming from front end, right? So I'll say const messages await request.json. I'm gonna take all the messages and I'll take out the latest message from these messages. So I'll say const latest message equals messages and messages.length -1 dot content. So we've taken the very latest message because we don't care about the other messages that the user have asked in the past. And I'll say let doc context is equals to empty for now. I'll show you what this is as well. We're going to be providing it some context before sending some response to the user. Okay, now before comparing it with our data, so the user has sent us this message, right? And we have our previous data in form of vector embeddings. So we need to compare this message to those data. So we need to convert this into vector embedding first, right? So that's what, just like we've done earlier, openai.embeddings.create. I'm gonna create embeddings for this latest message, and you can see I've used a different model over here, and that is not what you should do. You should use only one type of model. So text embedding ADA002 is also a good model. Either you can use this or you can use this one that I've used right over here, text embedding 3 small. So I'll just take this one only and I'll paste it over here. So I just wanted to show you that you can use different models, and you need to keep the model consistent. After this, I'll say const collection equals await. I'll take the collection from our database, so db.collection, and our collection was called portfolio. Then inside of this collection, I'm gonna find what we're supposed to find, right? This latest message, the response for this latest message. So I'll say const cursor equals collection dot find, and you can see this is this database is very similar to like MongoDB as well. The function like find and insert one that we are using over here. So first of all, it will take a filter, and I'll say null, there is no filter. Then for the options, I'm gonna say sort them with respect to the vector. So vector, and I'll say data, what the data that we've gotten from over here, data 0th index dot embedding, right? And then we're gonna be comparing it to our database, and I'll say limit, and you can see over here max number of document to return applies over the whole result, right? So I'm gonna set the limit to 5, only return 5 documents to us. Okay, we have our data now. Let's convert this to an array. So const document or documents equals await whatever data that we've gotten inside of this cursor dot to array. I'm gonna convert it inside of the, I'm gonna convert it to an array. Okay, now before sending it to our front end, that is to our user, I'm gonna have to tell it what the context is over here, right? First of all, I'm just gonna create a function over here, const, actually I've already created it over here, doc context. So I'll say doc context equals, and I'll say backticks, and inside this I'll say start underscore context, and actually this will be start space context and end context, and between this we need to write our context. So basically between both of these, we're going to be providing our data that you're only supposed to take the answer from over here and not from the Google, because let's, for example, personally for me, OpenAI can respond, like for example, if I ask it who is roadside coder, it can search and respond that roadside coder is a YouTuber, blah blah blah. So I need to tell it specifically that you need to take the context from here only, right? So between this, I'm going to take the documents that this has returned. So documents dot map, I'll take every single doc and say doc dot description, and I'll join them with /n, that is divided by different lines, multiple different lines. So we've got the context over here. Now I'm gonna provide it the end prompt. That is, I'm gonna tell it that how it's supposed to structure the response. So I'll say const rag prompt. So its role is of system and the content will be, let me just copy and paste it over here. It's too long actually. Context is that you are an AI assistant answering questions as Piyush Agarwal in his portfolio application, or you can replace your name over here, right? And then we'll provide the context in the between. If the answer is not provided in the context, the AI assistant will say, I am sorry, I do not know the answer, right? Only answer if it's provided in between over here. Oh, sorry, this has to be inside of an object. Yeah, like that. Okay, this looks good. Let's take this prompt and provide it to OpenAI's API so that it can structure our response for us. So I'll say const response equals await OpenAI dot chat dot completion. You might have seen this before, like if you have created any chat app in the past, we use this function dot completions dot create, and then we will say what's the model that we are going to use. I'm going to use GPT 3.5 Turbo. Are we supposed to stream the response? Yes, I'm supposed to stream the response, so I'll say true. And then the messages. So messages that we'll be providing is first of all the rag prompt, and then the messages that we already have gotten from the front end. Okay, I think this looks good. And then after this, I'm going to simply say const stream equals OpenAI stream. So you can see we have imported this function right over here. And what is it? It's deprecated. Don't worry, it's gonna still work. And then we will take the streaming text response. I'll say return new streaming text response, and I'll provide the stream to it. Stream. This stream right over here. Okay, I think this looks good, and I think I should wrap it inside of try catch block as well. So let's just say try catch, and let's take hold of this thing. I'll move it up there, and inside of the catch I'll just throw the error. So let's keep it E. Okay, so we've successfully created our backend and our API for our portfolio. Let's go on and build the front end now with NextJS. So I'll go over here inside of the page.js, and first of all I'll say use client, because we want it to be a client component, because we're going to be using states and all of those things. We're not going to be rendering inside of the server. So I'm going to be wrapping everything inside of the main tag, and inside of the main tag, first of all I'll have an image tag over here which will contain my image. If you want, you can keep your image as well, doesn't really matter. So let me just bring in my image. So inside this public folder I'll keep this image. Again, whatever image you want, you can keep it over here. So inside of this I'll say layout to fill this image. src will be /rs-big.webp. that is this one. Then we're supposed to provide the alt tag as well. So let's just say roadside coder banner, and object fit will be cover. I want it to cover whole of my page. Okay, let's go back and see if we can see something over here. Okay, great, it's visible. Now below this I'll have a div. Div. Inside of this I'll have an h1 tag which will say Piyush Agarwal's AI portfolio. And I think instead of this we can use something like this. Yeah, it will still show that symbol over there. So for the class name I'll say absolute, so that we can put it over this image. So I'll say absolute padding horizontal to be 4, width to be full, and height to be off screen, that is 100 viewport height. Then I'll say flex, let me just close it, flex column, so that everything is from top to bottom. Flex column, some gap of 5 between them. Items to be center, we can align them center horizontally, and bottom to be 5. Let's see what do we get. Okay, for some reason our text is over here. Let's see why. Let's just give this some styles as well. So I'll say text 4XL, font to be, like you can use whatever font over here. I'm using font Canet, and you can import this font from just searching, do a basic Google search over here. So font Canet, just go to Google Fonts and click on get font, get embed code, and just take the import right over here. So I'll just take it and paste it inside the globals.css. So right above it I'll just paste it. Okay, let's go back and see. Let's refresh this. What's wrong? Oh, we're supposed to provide it inside of the Tailwind configuration as well. So below the background image, I'll say font family canet. Okay, great. Let's see now. All right, this is working. Also, I've provided breakpoints over here. That is, screens bigger than medium are gonna have text 5XL. Font is going to be bold. Text is going to be white, and margin top is going to be 10. Okay, cool. Let's create our chat interface. So I'll create a section over here. And inside of this, I will render all of my messages. So render messages. I'll come back to this. Before that, let's create a form. Inside of it, we will, input our messages. So inside this form, I'll have a input tag, which will have placeholder. Let's just put some dummy question over here. What's your hometown? Let's style it. So I'll give it class name, padding vertical to be 3, padding horizontal to be 5. Flex one, so right, it spreads and takes the space. It's going to be rounded from the corner. Text will be black. Text will be 2XL. Border will be 2 and border gray 50. And on focus, the outline will be none, but we will show border blue to be 500. Let's go back and see. If I click on it, yeah, this is working. And the type of input that it will take is going to be text. Okay, below this, I'm going to have a button tag, which will say submit. And let's just give some styling to this as well. So I'll say background blue to be 500. When we hover on it, background blue will be 600. Text will be text white. Rounded from the corners, text XL. Some padding horizontal to be 5. Cursor to be pointer. When we focus on it, outline will be none. When it's disabled, the background blue will be 400. Okay, pretty cool. And this will be of type submit. So that even when we press enter, it will trigger, handle submit function that we will be creating over here. So I'll say on submit, I'll take the event and I'll say e.prevent default. And below this, we will trigger our handle submit function. So handle submit. And let's go back and see. Okay, looks good. This form will have class name of width full, some display flex, and gap to be 2. Let's see. All right. Now, for this section, I'll say class name to be width full, flex to be 1, so that it pushes the header and footer to the top and bottom, and flex columns because we're going to be aligning everything from top to bottom. Overflow y scroll because we want the messages to scroll as we input them. So let's see. Okay, cool. We're going to be rendering messages right over here. Now, before writing this, let's work on our logic. So I'm going to be again using that package that we have installed earlier, and I'm going to be importing something called as useChat custom hook from that package. So useChat, okay, it's not importing. Let me manually import it. Import useChat from AI/React. Okay. Now this useChat over here provides us a bunch of things. So const. Also, one thing that is amazing about this AI library is that I've told you that we are going to be creating inside this /API/chat route, right? So now it can automatically access this. It's going to just make an API call to this post function over here using the request object. We don't have to do anything. And it's going to provide us a bunch of things over here, like is loading, messages, input, handle, input change, and handle submit. All of these things that we're going to need. So let's take this input, and I'm going to provide it as value over here in the input. I'm going to take the handle input change, and I'm going to provide it inside of the input on change, right? And it's going to handle everything right out of the box. Right over here, I'm going to be doing handle submit, right? So instead of this, I'll be using handle submit and E. So handle submit, yeah, now it's spelling correct. And we need the messages and the is loading. So let's take the is loading, and inside this section over here, I'm going to render my messages and the is loading as well. Okay, so let's try to work on this. But first of all, let's just take these messages and console log them over here. Okay, let's try it out. If I right click and open my console, I'll say, what's your hometown? Let's clear the console and press on submit. Let's see what do we get. So it must have made an API call. If we go to network tab, you can see it made an API call to our backend. Let's see what response we get. Let's go back to the console. Okay, there we go. We are getting, we are getting the data as a streamed from the backend. So you can see when we have asked what's your hometown, it first responded with I. And procedurally it's just giving us a response. I was born and raised in. And let's go to the final one. I was born and raised in Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh. Amazing. So this is exactly what we wanted, and let's render all of these messages inside of this section over here. Let me just close this. Yeah, inside this section. First of all, we need to check if are there any messages or not. So for that, I'm going to be creating a logic over here. Const no messages. If there is nothing inside this message or messages.length is equals to 0, then what's going to happen? I'm going to take this, and inside of this section, I'll say if there are no messages, question mark, I'll render a p tag over here, which will say ask me anything. This will simply have the class name of text center and text excel. Okay, but if that is not the case, I'm gonna take a empty fragment over here. Okay, inside of this, first of all, let's just display our loading. So I'll say if it's loading, then render this span of thinking. Okay, and above this, I'll take all of my messages and map through them. So okay, so this will give us the message and the index. I'll say return a div with message dot content. Let's see if this working or not. Let's actually give this a key as well first. Okay, now let's go back. Can we see anything here? Let's ask this again. What's your hometown? It is thinking. Let's see what response we get. Great, we get the same response. Let's go back and style this a little bit. So first of all, before rendering this message.content, I'm gonna have a b tag which will tell me who is this, like message.role. If the role is equals to user, that is the user who is trying to ask me questions, so I'll just say user colon, else I'll say Piyush, that is my name. Yep, you can see over here. Great, let's style this again for our div. So I'll say class name, and again we're gonna be styling it with respect to the role. So notice, first of all, I'll check message.role. If it's equals to user, then rounded bottom right is gonna be null. First of all, I'll make the whole thing as rounded. If it's user, that is like the one who's trying to ask the question, it's going to be on the right side, right? So I'm going to say margin left to be auto so that it's on the right side, and then I'll make the border right to be none, so that we don't want that to be rounded. And similar for the assistant, I'm going to make it border left to be none. And over here we have some padding margin with some width, and more than medium screen is going to have width 80%, margin top, and some text of gray. Let's see. Okay. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The more data that you provide to this app, the better it will become. So let me just ask it, have you made any personal projects? Let's see what it gives us. Okay, yes, I have made a chat app using MERN. You can find the code for that project on my GitHub at this link. Amazing. So you see how convenient this is. Whatever the recruiter or the person who's trying to know you want to know about you, they can just simply type the questions over here and they can get to know about you. So if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more such awesome tutorials.